proposal that are not related to the required variances. Noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values. Prosecution for illegal construction. Personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants. Additional variances without public proper notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. We have received one stat dec for item 1, so I will be administering an oath to agents, applicants for the rest of the items on the agenda. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing, due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where certification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where added clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following the adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision, and to all the parties and those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. Before we get to the agenda, then we have a number of items of business to deal with. Are there any declarations of interest for either items on this agenda or the agendas of the other two panels today? I believe we have some.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 1, I'll be declaring an interest because my wife is an associate and a friend of the agent for item 1. So to avoid any perceived conflict, I won't be participating in any discussion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wildman. Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to declare a potential perceived non-pecuniary conflict of interest under the city's Code of Conflict for Local Boards in 2 applications heard by panel 3. One by Madame Holmes for property at 2030 Linmos Lane. As a member of my husband's family is employed by the applicant, as well as on applications by Stephen Lewis for property at 1795 Ashton Station Road, as I previously worked with the applicant and he is known to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Anyone else? All right. We have some minutes to confirm. We have the minutes from the 5th of August 2020, the 19th of August 2020, the 2nd of September last year, and the 16th of September last year. I think all members have reviewed the minutes. Are there any questions, concerns with any of these 4 sets of minutes? All right. So for the August 5th, 2020, all in favor of adopting the minutes? So adopted. For the August 19th minutes, all in favor of adopting the minutes? So adopted. For the September 2nd, 2020 minutes, all in favor of adopting the minutes? Minutes are adopted. And finally, for the September 16th, 2020 hearing, all in favor of adopting the minutes? Those minutes have been adopted. Thank you. We will now hear the first two items on our list today, which are adjournment requests. And the first adjournment request we have today is for item number 5 on the agenda, 160 Fifth Avenue and 2 Monk Street. I believe this request for adjournment has come from the planning department. So if the planning department would like to comment on this, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have requested adjournment on this item due to the fact that there's an ongoing zoning bylaw amendment for these lands, and it is not remotely advanced enough for us to be able to evaluate it. I mean, to provide an opinion on the appropriateness of the requested consents, staff would need the new zoning provisions, which are not currently in place. So there's nothing against which we can evaluate these requests.
And any idea when the rezoning application will be dealt with, Mr. Nadeau?
No, it does not appear to me that it's imminent.
So a sine die adjournment would probably be appropriate in this instance.
I can comment on that.
Just a second, Mr. Gelkowski, Mr. Nadeau, a sine die. Department of
That would be my inclination, sir. Yes.
All right, Mr. Gelkowski, please.
Thank you very much. We've been in detailed conversations. We've had the initial feedback on the project, so we agree with the adjournment request at this point in time, but would request that it be put to the next hearing. And the reason why is that we're actually very close to a resolution on, there's actually 2 issues that we're just dealing with the planner, with Steve Gauthier. We've worked with the community association. That's all in place. The circulation period is up. We've got our first list of comments back, and we'll be responding to those. And our belief is that by the end of next week, we'll actually be fully ready to go for the planner's report to go to council. So that's why I say we're actually very, very close. We've done a lot of outreach with the community, so there's no further community issues that are going to arise. It's just a technical aspect that Brian Casagrande from Fotan is dealing with Steve.
I think you've heard from Mr. Nadeau, though, that there is no date for this item to come before planning committee.
That would be true, yes.
So, Mr. Gelkowski, I mean, quite frankly, since we don't have a planning committee hearing date, I don't think it'd be wise for us to do anything but adjourn this sine die.
My understanding is that if we've got staff and the developer agreeing, even though we aren't on a date, I know the process takes some time in that regard, but if we have full agreement and you have at that point in time, you'll certainly have Steve's opinion on where we're at, and I'm quite sure you're going to have that within 2 weeks. And I've had previous cases where we've heard the issue as long as the Committee of Adjustment felt comfortable that the rezoning request had advanced past the first sort of round and that there was general agreement.
Well, we don't have that in paper. We have nothing, basically, except for the comments from the planning department. And you've already heard Mr. Nadeau telling us and advising us that a sine die application would be, or sine die adjournment would be in order at this time. And I think other than if the other members of the committee, Ms. McLean? You
I
want
don't
to,
think, Mr. Chair, I would be comfortable in dealing with these applications until it has been passed, the zoning amendment has been passed by City Council and the appeal period has also passed.
I agree. So with that, we have an we have a request for adjournment. And I'm suggesting, and I think Ms. McLean agrees with me, that we adjourn this application sine die. All in favor? All right, application is adjourned sine die. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The next application up for adjournment is item 9 on the agenda, 71 Chestnut Street. And the request for adjournment has come from the Old Ottawa East Community Association. Is their representative available?
Hello?
I'm looking for the representative from the Old Ottawa East.
Yes, my name is Ron Rose. I'm the
Rose, your address,
representative.
please. Your address, please, Mr. Rose.
264 Main Street, Ottawa.
All right, thank you. All right, and your request for, if you'd articulate your request for an adjournment, Mr. Rose, please.
Mr. Chairman, we do not require a delay at this point. We had a number of concerns which we communicated to the committee concerning the mislabeling of the application on the original agenda. However, Mr. D'Angelo did organize a community consultation. We had a chance to attend that. We had a chance to hear comments from neighbors and to understand the situation. So we are withdrawing this request for a delay and are quite prepared to proceed today.
All right, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll put this back in the normal order of the agenda, and we'll deal with this at a later point in this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rose. Okay. So bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. Next item on the agenda today will be item number 1. Oh, where are we here? Hang on 1 second. Yep. Item number 1, 1040 Bank Street. This is an application to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to create separate ownerships for partial redevelopment of the property. The existing Southminster United Church will be retained and the Assembly Hall will be partially demolished for the future residential development of a 6-story building and an underground parking space. And the applicants, the agent for the applicants are Ms. Libman and Mr. Ruddy. Ms. Libman. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
I am going to, we have the statutory declaration, so I don't have to administer the oath to you. So if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, please.
Sure, I submitted a presentation, so we'll just wait for it to come up. Here we go. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of information about the background of the development, just to let you know that it has gone through a zoning bylaw amendment, which was appealed to the LPAT, but was settled in the summer and is in full force and effect. It's also, the project will be is undergoing site plan control approval. The councillor has provided his concurrence with the conditions. My client is satisfied with the conditions, and approval is imminent. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the application is to separate the property into 2 separate parcels. The parcel fronting on Bank and Aylmer will contain the retained church, the existing church, and the new portion for development to be purchased by my client has frontage on Aylmer and Galt Street. Next slide, please. This shows a site plan, the proposed site plan, as well as a picture of the existing church. In the other top corner is a rendering of the proposed condominium building, which visible from Galt Street. And the picture at the bottom is the townhouse dwelling that this is the view taken from Aylmer Avenue. So those are the 2 buildings that are proposed for construction. Next slide, please. So the application is to, as noted, sever the property into 2 parcels. The first will have 20.15 meters of frontage on Aylmer, 50.58 meters on Galt Street. This is the proposed parcel for development. And the other 14.61 meters on Bank, 62.22 meters on Aylmer, and this is the existing church. The next slide shows the draft reference plan with the severance line. So you can see that there. This has an overlay of the proposed buildings over top of what is an existing community hall that will be demolished. If you can see that at the back of the church, and if you're familiar with the property at all, that was an addition in the 1950s, and it will be demolished to allow development to proceed.
Right.
Next slide, please. So this was just a point for discussion that the zoning bylaw includes a schedule of heights and setbacks. And you can see faintly there's a red circle around a 2.8 meter measurement that is on the schedule. You can see though that that measurement is shown with slashes, not with arrows, whereas when the schedule refers to actual setback requirements, they're shown with an arrow. I confirmed this with planning staff. The reason it's relevant is that the proposed severance line is actually not going to be where it is shown on the schedule, but it's actually in the middle there. So it'll be a 1.4 meter setback from the existing church and a 1.4 meter setback from the proposed construction. This is to avoid a building code issue. If the proposed building were to be so close to the property line, fire shutters would have been required. And so we've confirmed with planning that all setbacks can be met. The location of the buildings is not changing. It's just the location of the proposed severance line.
Okay.
And actually the next slide goes into this a bit more. So you can see the outline of the existing church and the proposed building and the 1.4 meters on either side of the proposed severance line. Okay. Planning staff referred to this in their report as well. And next slide, please. So we received and reviewed comments from Building Code Services, Planning, Forestry, Hydro, and Rogers. I was able to discuss the comment with forestry and with planning. So planning issued a revised report and we are in concurrence with all of the proposed conditions.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify with forestry services that the requirement for their tree report, that will be dealt with through site plan, and the comment was submitted to the committee for information purposes only, not to request a condition. One condition that I would like to discuss with the committee, though, was submitted by Building Code Services. I'm just looking for the wording here. Anyway, I can't find it, but it has to do with a spatial separation analysis. And I would like to request that the committee impose that not as a condition of the severance. The spatial analysis will have to be completed in order to obtain a building permit. And as noted, we're going through site plan control and plan to conform with the building code, of course. So just a bit more information about that is that the portion of the building that will be demolished, that is as a condition of the severance. And we would like to deal with the spatial separation analysis through the building code permit, if possible. Otherwise, there were no other comments. And so next slide. Oh, okay. I thought there was one. Yeah. So it's my submission that the committee has the authority to grant this severance under the provisions of the Planning Act.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lehman. So would it impose any hardship on you if we impose the spatial separation condition today rather than waiting for building permit?
Not really, because I mean, it would just be a timing issue. The demolition of the building is required, obviously, as a condition of the severance, and that spatial separation won't really be able to be conducted until after that demolition has been completed. And I'm just concerned about running into a timing issue with the completion of the project and the pulling of building permits.
So if we waive that condition today, your timing issues are minimized.
Yes.
Yet there'll still be a requirement for a spatial separation agreement.
Yes.
Okay. You're aware of the other conditions that have been requested: cash in lieu, independent services, grading and drainage, the removal of the community hall, which is gone, I believe. You're also aware that the noise and vibration attenuation study has been waived, and the corner site triangle has also been waived.
Yes.
And for forestry, well, you've already mentioned forestry, and they'll be dealt through site plan control with the tree protection bylaw. Any comments from any other members regarding this application? All right.
Mr. Chair, we do have a member of the public online.
Okay.
Ross Ferris.
All right.
Ross is with Woodmill.
Okay.
Okay. Never.
Mr. Ferris, you have anything to add, or has Ms. Libman said it all?
No, Ms. Libman has said it all. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right, then, and that with that being said, all in favor of this this consent? That's fine. All right. Your consent is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next application on our agenda today is application number 2, 24 Oak Street. And this is to permit a reduced front yard setback for the construction of an enclosed front entrance and mudroom. And I believe Miss Maillet is the agent for this application. Hi there.
Hello.
All right, could I have your address for the record, please?
Yes, absolutely. It's 24 Oak Street.
Okay. All right. And just a very, very briefly, tell us what you would like to do.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
I have to administer the oath. I keep forgetting.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's
I
no
sent it in, but
there's
maybe
no
you didn't receive it.
statutory declaration. So, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. So I won't take up a lot of your time. I know that you have my application there with you.
Yes, we do.
I don't have a lot to add. It's really just an application for a reduction of the setback from 3.2 meters to 2.8. And so you can see, that's not my house that you see on there. It's the yellow one next to it. But you can, I can tell the committee members that it's the smallest house on the street. That's the streetscape. They're all big 2-story homes with balconies on each one, most of them, as well as front porches. And my application, because my house is so small and I have 0 closet space, is to build a front entrance and mudroom. These are the other homes. Mine is, so you see the yellow one there on the left. I'm currently building a porch on the front, which doesn't go beyond the other porches. And I would just like to close part of that porch in so that I can have a front entrance. There we go. There's my house. So if you look at it compared to the other homes, it's very small and old, and I've been renovating and just need some space in this climate to put coats and boots. And so I know one of my neighbors indicated they sent a letter that this is a 400 centimeter adjustment, but in fact, I think she got her math wrong. I think it's 40 centimeters that I'm asking for. So
yes, we have a letter in support from one of your neighbors. All right. Any questions from the applicant, from the members of the committee? All in favor of this application as applied? Good luck with enclosing your porch.
thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Next applications we will deal with today are items 3 and 4 on the list. 630 Tweedsmuir Avenue, 257, 259, 261 Dover Court. And I believe Mr. Robinson is the agent for the applicant. Is he there?
Hello,
Mr. Robinson, for the record, your address, please.
100 Palomino Drive, Ottawa.
Okay, and we will have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear.
All right. This application summarizes to subdivide the property into 3 separate parcels of land. The existing detached dwelling will be demolished for the construction of 1 detached dwelling on 1 parcel and a semi-detached dwelling on the other 2 parcels of land. Permit reduced lot areas and front setbacks as well. The existing detached dwelling will be demolished for the construction of a new detached dwelling on 1 lot and a semi-detached dwelling on the other 2. So, if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing up the presentation material. The first drawing that you see before you is the existing survey plan. So this property is on the northwest corner of Dovercourt Avenue and Tweedsmuir Avenue. The address is 630 Tweedsmuir. There is a single family home facing Tweedsmuir. And then on the west side of the property, there is a detached garage that would exit out to Dovercourt. To the north is a single family home. And then on the, I think it's 1 or 2 properties north of that, at the southwest corner of Duncairn and Tweedsmuir, there is a very similar development has been constructed where there was a new home and new semis built. They were approved by the committee, I believe, in 2014 and built about 2016 on lots that are slightly smaller than this and with slightly more reduced front yard setbacks. To the west on Dovercourt, 263 and 265 Dovercourt are semi-detached units that have recently been built and have been severed and occupied. The builder for an owner for 263 and 265 who built that project is the same builder for this project here at 630 Tweedsmuir. Next drawing, please. This is the draft 4R plan. So parts 1 and 2 would be semi-detached units. They would have a front yard setback of 3 meters. The bylaw calls for a front yard setback of 5.54 meters. As you can see, these lots are relatively short in depth. Part 3 would be a new single family home. It would also have a front yard setback of 3 meters as measured to Dover Court and 4.5 meters as measured to Tweedsmuir. The parking space for part 1 would be on the left-hand or west side of that part. The parking space for part 2 would be on the right-hand side of part 2. And the parking space for part 3 would be along the north property line alongside the north wall of the house, which would be on part 3. We're requesting obviously consent applications, but also minor variances as indicated for front yard setback, the same front yard setback for all 3. And then on the semis, it would be a request for a reduced lot area. The requirement is 170 square meters, where those parts are each 141 square meters. And the requirement for a single detached house in this R3S zone would be for 270 square meters of lot area, and the part 3 is 222 square meters. As I just indicated, the zoning is R3S. It permits singles, semis, triplexes. We're obviously we were compliant that way, having semis and a single. We meet the rear yard setback requirements. We meet the interior side yard setback and the corner side yard setback. And we also meet the height limit. The height limit is 8 meters, and the units are between 7.16 and 7.49 meters, which that would be in line with the semis, which are to the west. Part 4 on this plan is a daylighting triangle that we had shown from the beginning. It's also listed as one of the conditions, so that provides for additional visibility. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is the site plan. The units are relatively small in terms of their footprint. The semis have a footprint of, I think, 652 square feet. So that would be about 61 or 62 square meters. And then the single family home on the corner has a footprint of 801 square feet. So about 75 square meters. So the footprint of the units is proportional to the size of the lots that are being proposed here.
One question, Mr. Robinson. I'm looking at the driveways for the semis and for the single. What are the dimensions of those parking spaces in front of the units?
They are compliant. They're 2.6 by 5.2 meters.
That's for the semis?
Yes, and the single. The single shows the parking space for the single shows as it's behind the north wall of the single, and it's got a X across it, and then there's a driveway leading to it.
Yeah. Okay. Please continue. Thanks.
Yep. For the single, they all have front porches, and the single also has a walkway going from the porch along the Tweedsmuir frontage of the property. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Here's the architectural elevations. We've got the semis on the top left and the top right, and then we've got the elevations for the single family home in the center and the bottom of the drawing. The height, we meet the height limit. There's no variances related to any projections or anything like that related to the units.
Okay.
Next, please. This is a photo taken a few months ago. These are the semis that are immediately to the west that were also built by my client. And then you can see the existing home that's on the subject property that's in a light blue tone on the right, and you can see the garage for my client's property there. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the existing single-family home on the property on the left. The property to the north, which I believe is 626 Tweedsmuir, is on the right. I believe you have correspondence from that property owner's representative about fencing. My client has been in discussions with that property owner, and they're going to share the cost of a fence along the mutual property line, and they're going to come to an agreement about a fence that they can both agree upon. The property owner to the right at 626 is intending to likely build a semi on his property in the near future. He has not filed the applications, but he's in support of this application. And I believe through his architect, he sent correspondence indicating that fencing arrangements will be made. Next slide, please. This is a drawing, and it shows the site plan, and it shows in a red outline what could be built on the site if you were to build one single family home. If you were to build one single family home on this that's zoning compliant, Tweedsmuir would be the front lot line, and you would have a 6 meter front yard setback. You would have a 4.5 meter corner side yard setback along Dover Court, and a 1.2 meter setback to the north, and then the rear yard setback. Because it's a corner lot, there's complicated calculations, and it's you have to provide a certain lot area in the rear yard, and an area that's 2.89 meters in depth covers that. So this shows that if this was to be just one single family home, it could have a rather large footprint of, as I indicated on this presentation document, 233 square meters or 2,508 square feet. We're proposing here with semis and a single family home, a smaller footprint of 196 square meters or 2,105 square feet. So that's just for your information purposes. And then I think there's just one more document or page. Oh no, here's our renderings. The dashed yellow line indicates the property boundary on the west side of the subject property. So these are the renderings of the semis, and then on the far right of that rendering would be the new single family home. In a somewhat shaded tone on the left are the semis that have recently been built at 265 and 263 Dover Court. Next, please. This is just taken a little bit further along from a little bit further to the east. You can see obviously the property line on the left, and then the semis, and then the Dover Court facing facade of the single family home. Next, please. This is the view from Tweedsmuir, looking back towards the single family home in the foreground and the semis in the background. Further in the rear of that rendering are the semis that were recently built, and on the right is the single family home that is at 626 Tweedsmuir. Next, please. I think this is the final presentation document. This is 618 Tweedsmuir and 258 and 260 Duncairn. This is just 50 meters to the north. This was approved by the committee in the summer of 2014. It was built sometime between 2015 and 2017 based on Google Street View imagery. We've got a single family home that faces the two, both Tweedsmuir and Duncairn on the left, and then semis on the right that are fronting onto Duncairn. So there's a number, there's this example in the area. Both Duncairn and Tweedsmuir and Dovercourt have a number of semi-detached properties on them. The zoning allows singles and semis. Staff are in support of the application. They had no concerns, and I'm available for questions.
I think there are several. Mr. Wilder, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I have a concern with the front yard setback of the 3 meters that you're requesting. I've been by the property. I've been by the property on Duncairn. You have a sidewalk here in Dovercourt. You've seen one of the comments put in by a resident who lives over at 273. The properties on Duncairn had a setback, gave it an extra meter plus there, I guess, in terms of the setback from the street. Yours is much closer to the sidewalk. You could actually work this site a lot better and build a really nice semi-detached, notwithstanding what was built over on Duncairn. And I think the dimensions could be different. You've shown what would happen if you had just a single as opposed to a semi and a single on this lot. I just feel that what you didn't show is putting a nice, like your neighbor put, your client put next door, a nice semi at this corner. Considering it's right at the corner, I just feel it's, notwithstanding Duncairn, somewhat crowded. And I just feel that I've got concern over that matter with the setback. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Mr. Wildman?
Yeah, Mr. Robinson, 618, the example that you showed a couple of minutes ago, the setback, how does that compare to the setback requested here?
I believe they have a 4.04 meters.
Okay, so large.
And they are on whereby our lot for the single is 222 square meters. Theirs is 194. And for their semis, they have lot areas of 135 and we have 141.
Okay, and same sort of question for the one that was constructed recently beside this property, the setback there?
That's 5.58, I think, or 5.54, sorry.
Okay, and I think you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, although I'm not sure there was any type of a plan or an image showing that there are similar setbacks in the community or nearby. Did you say that, or did I misunderstand that?
There's the property that I mentioned at 618 Tweedsmuir has a setback of 4 meters, or 4.04. There are it's not out of keeping with other setbacks in the area. The dimension from, there was a comment about the setback from the sidewalk along Dovercourt. The distance from the sidewalk to the property line is about 3.5 meters. And then there's another 3 meters that we're indicating or requesting. So that would be a setback from the north edge of the sidewalk to the front wall of the buildings along Dovercourt would be 6.5 meters.
Okay, last question. There's one city-owned Norway maple. Can any of your plans show where that is relative to the work you're doing?
Yep, if you can go back.
So,
the rendering would probably be the best one. It would be the tree on the closest to the sidewalk.
Okay,
And then the tree that's in the background
yes,
is that tree, yes. And then the tree that's was in the background on the previous rendering is a tree that appears to be right on the sort of mutual city-private property line.
okay. And that one's coming down?
No, that one is, the two that are in this rendering are staying.
Okay, all right. And so how far is roughly your excavation from the two trees that are staying?
The tree that is shown here in the foreground that's on a city, that's on the city property line, that is probably going to be about 4 or 5 meters away, and the shared one would be that at least as well. Though those, the forester did not have any issues with those. He thought with the proper protective measures done during construction that those could be retained.
Okay, I know that we now have a forester here, so if we have any follow-up questions, we can do that. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wilder again.
I guess this rendering is a little misleading. You're saying that your client's property next door, the setback is how much from the street? 5. So you're going from a setback that's it's 5.5, and you're asking. See, what concerns me here is the depth of this property, as opposed to your client's property next door for the semi, which is obviously a much deeper lot than what you're dealing with here at the corner. And notwithstanding the property on Duncairn, I'm really concerned. I think you're making smaller lots here because of the reduced setback. Still leaves a very small. I understand it meets the rear yard requirement. There's no, no variance for that, but I still feel that it's somewhat overdevelopment of this lot, considering, notwithstanding it has the frontage on Dovercourt, it's still a very shallow lot in terms of its depth. And with the requested setback, which should typically be, well, 15 feet or 5 meters, you're asking for 3 meters compared to your client's property next door. I still have some concerns, sorry.
Mr. Robinson, could you articulate the 4 tests for this application?
Sure.
Please?
The 4 tests of a minor variance. The variances are to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw and are to be desirable for the appropriate use of the land and are minor in nature. The proposed development does not require variances related to side yard setbacks, rear yard area, or building height. The variances are considered to be minor in nature, and with the zoning permitting this use within the existing lot fabric, the intent of the zoning is maintained, and the variances requested are minor in nature. The R3 zone contemplates a range of residential uses such as singles and semis, and the proposed lots are consistent with the general pattern of development in the area. As a small-scale intensification of the property from a single-family home to a new single-family home and semi-detached units, the purpose is in conformity with the official plan designation for the property, which is general urban area, and it maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan, which allows for a variety of ground-oriented housing forms. One thing I'd like to just say in response to Mr. Wilder's comments, I understand that these lots are smaller in lot area than the lot area of the property to the west, which was developed for semis, and the semis that are being proposed are on a smaller lot, but as well in the scale of, or the ratio of the footprint of the buildings to the lot area has been brought down as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I believe we have one member of the public who wishes to speak. Mr. Beer, am I pronouncing your name properly?
Yes, you're correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have your address, please.
Yeah. 273 Dovercourt Avenue.
Okay. And if you please proceed.
Okay, I just want to go on record as objecting primarily because of these will be the closest houses on all of Dovercourt in the block to the sidewalk. It's not in line with the streetscape, and along with giving up 2.54 meters for all three dwellings from the setback, there's a total of 95.5 meters squared in the entire area of the lot that is also being sacrificed. And from what I can see, what's happening is to preserve the backyard, the front yard has been sacrificed to do that. And that is my objection.
All right. Mr. Robinson, comment, response?
We're providing, in terms of the distance from the sidewalk to the building itself. It's obviously the sidewalk is on the city property. Then there's about another 3.5 meters, and then we're having 3 more meters, so 6.5 meters, which is in this we feel is a suitable setback on a property like this. In terms of, the building could have been shifted around so that the front yard setback was a greater setback and less of a variance request. But if the units were to be a similar size, then it would be there'd be setback rear yard setback issues as well.
Okay. You're aware of the conditions being asked for: cash in lieu, independent services, grading and drainage, joint use and maintenance agreement, the removal of the existing dwelling, and the 3x3 meter corner site triangle?
Yes, I am.
And you said that your property owner was in agreement with the abutting neighbor to build a privacy fence?
Yes.
They will construct one?
Yes.
You've heard the concerns regarding front yard setbacks. We also have a letter from a Mr. McCourt, who speaks to flooding on the street and stormwater management issues, the aesthetic quality of new homes, traffic, snow storage, parking, loss of tree and sunlight, noise and dust of constructions. Any response? You've seen his comments, I take it?
Yes, I have.
Any response to that particular neighbor's input?
It mentions that there's no parking, but there's at least one parking space for each of these units, and then there's a driveway leading to those parking spaces. In terms of stormwater, there is a storm sewer on Tweedsmuir that the single family home will connect to. The semis will have to they're going to have to there's going to be sump pumps for those, because there's Dovercourt itself does not have any storm sewers, and that's been the situation for all of Dovercourt from Tweedsmuir all the way over to Churchill. I think some of the comments are general concerns about just things in the neighborhood, not specific to this property.
As far as stormwater management is concerned, I'm assuming that the drainage and grading plan is going to deal with the fact that there is no storm sewer on Dovercourt?
Yes, and that was the exact same thing was done for the grading and servicing plan for the semis to the west.
Okay. All right. You're also aware of Hydro's comments, I take it?
Yes.
And you are saving 2 out of 3 trees?
Yes.
And that the forestry department you've been in discussion with them on this matter?
Yes.
Okay. I think there are some concerns, and in particular regarding setbacks and potential overdevelopment of the site with members of the committee. So I think the best thing for us to do is to reserve on this decision, and you'll have our decision in 10 days.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
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 Next item on the agenda today, item 6, Luxcraft Homes, 375 Madison Avenue. Summary of the application is to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. And is the agent there by any chance? I see one name I'm not familiar with on the screen, but the person is muted.
Hi.
Could you identify yourself and give us your address, please, sir?
Yeah, it's Esan Frozanda, 375 Madison Avenue.
Okay. Could you very briefly explain? This is just a simple consent application, sir?
Yeah, I got building permit from city on January 2020.
Okay.
For the building semi-detached 2 dwelling.
Mr. Chair,
I have to, before we continue, I've got to administer the oath because there wasn't a sign up on your property. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do swear.
Okay, thanks. Please continue.
Yeah, I got the building permit from city in January 2020 to build semi-detached homes there. Okay. And so far, just maybe in a couple of weeks, we can apply for occupancy.
Okay.
So as my neighbor, 373 Madison, he got the same application like 2 years ago from city.
Yeah.
So exactly like same land size. He got the semi-detached there. So I applied the same from city.
Yeah.
And they gave me permit, and
okay.
So I'm here. I don't need any minor variance.
No, it's just a simple consent. And there's conditions that the department has requested, cash in lieu of parkland, independent services guaranteed, a joint use and maintenance agreement. And the committee's wondering why the department is asking for a grading and drainage plan. To get your building permit, didn't you have to have an approved grading and drainage plan?
Yeah, actually from the beginning we had some mistake, and we had to revise it. Maybe that's why.
So they're asking for a second grading and drainage plan?
And we did submit it to the city already.
Pardon me?
They have it. They should have it. Second grading plan.
The planner want to comment on this? We got some confusion here. I'm just wondering why we're going to be asking to impose the condition that's already been met.
Mr. Chair, this is a standard condition that we imposed on all semi-detached severances or townhome severances. If the applicant already has the plans and they were submitted, it'll just be a question of him emailing the plans again, and that condition will be cleared.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. You understand that, sir?
Yes.
You're gonna have to email them the grading and drainage plan.
I will.
Okay. Ms. McLean, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about the proposed severance line and the steps of the eastern unit. Are the steps going to straddle that proposed severance line?
No.
Do you have a front elevation to show or anything?
Unfortunately, I don't have a picture to show you, but it's only one step goes up. The full elevation, only one step.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so there's not going to be an issue of projection straddling lines? Sir? Okay. Because if that happens, then you're responsible.
Yeah, I understand.
All right.
It's only one step.
Okay. All right. With that, all in favor of granting this application for consent?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item to be dealt with today is item number 7, 320 Tweedsmuir Avenue. This is again an application to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. And the
Morning,
agent,
Mr. Chair.
the agent is Mr. Ruddy, and I have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I swear.
All right. And this is just a simple consent application, Mr. Ruddy?
Simple consent application with the lot being subdivided into 2 equally sized lots. Each unit is self-sufficient, water, sanitary, and storm. And there are no minor variances required.
Okay. And you're aware of the conditions for independent services, an approved grading and drainage plan, joint use and maintenance agreement, and a noise attenuation or a noise warning on title with
Yes,
provision.
I've gone through those with my client, all satisfactory.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the members of the panel on this application? All in favor of granting this consent application? The application is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Have a good one.
Next item on the agenda is 36 bracket 38 on bracket Kenora Street. Again, to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the 2-story semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. And the agent for this would be Mr. Segreto.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Mr. Segreto, have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear, yeah.
And this is just a simple consent application, Mr. Segreto?
Same as the last 2, the previous 2 applications, similar to them.
All right. And you're aware of the 5 conditions: cash in lieu of parkland, independent services, grading and drainage plan, joint use maintenance agreement, and accessory structure to be removed.
Yes, I am.
All right. Any questions from the panel on this application? All in favor of granting the consent application as that stands? All right. The application is granted. Mr. Segreto, thank you.
Thank you.
Now deal with item number 9. Chestnut, 71 Chestnut Street. And the summary of the application is to permit a vertical ornament element, a porch and stairs to be closer to a lot line, reduced corner side yard and northerly side yard setbacks, increased driveway width to permit a rear yard to be provided in lieu of the required interior yard, to provide an increased garage door width and to permit a double driveway. It is proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a 3-story detached dwelling. And I believe Mr. D'Angelo is the applicant.
I am the applicant, Mr. Chairman, but Mr. Jazolski will be my agent presenting today.
Mr. Jazolski, okay. And is he online? Mr. Giacotti, all right. So who am I administering the oath to?
You can do it to me, Mr.
All
Chair.
right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right, thank you. Mr. Giacozzi, if you'd like to make your presentation, please.
You're on mute, Chris.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, I'm being heard, I guess, now.
Yeah.
The site, first slide here shows the existing building. It's the building to the top left corner with the two front to rear semi-detached dwellings just to the left of that. Springhurst is the main street on the front. To your right, you see two semi-detached dwellings that have a...
Sorry, Chris, the wrong photo is being shown by the, you're on slide 2.
I'm on slide 2. Oh dear. Just hang on a second here. Okay. So we're on slide 2. This shows
Back
to
to
the
slide 1. There you go.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm back on slide 1. So Springhurst is the main street going from the lower right corner to the upper left corner. Chestnut is the street that you see coming off of Springhurst, going to the left. The subject property that we're talking about is the dwelling that's on the corner of Chestnut and Springhurst. Okay. Next to that property are two long semis that currently have a building permit that's been approved. On your right side of the screen, you see two semi-detached dwellings that have depressed driveways. Just to the left of those, you also see a bungalow. You'll see a bungalow across the street from that, and a 2-story single family across the street from the subject property. On the far right side of the property is a large low-rise apartment building. Next slide, please. If you're looking at this slide, you'll see that there's a dotted line. The property line is shown with a green area to the right and left of it that show the landscaped areas. The proposed building is shown in yellow. The dotted line shows an approximate line of all of the homes on Springhurst on the north side of Springhurst. And this property generally lines up with that same setback. The other aspect is that normally, because this is a corner lot, the rear yard setback would be an indented portion that you see on the upper right side of the property. The client has gone to a more regular rear yard that is more in keeping with the neighboring properties. The parking is accessed off of Springhurst, which is the long lot line for the property, and so it therefore is a small percentage as is intended for lots that are over 10 meters in width. The lot frontage for this property is on Chestnut. That's why the variance for the driveway and the garage. That's also why the variance is on the rear yard. And also because the property is a corner lot, the interior side yard requirement normally would permit 0.6 meters, but because it's a corner lot, requires a 1.2 meter. So that's most of the variances that are being asked for. The last variance has to do with ornamental elements that accentuate the entrance of the building. The difference between this building and the rest of the buildings on Chestnut are, of course, that the entrance enters at the middle of the wide portion of the building. It makes most efficient use of the property internally. Next slide, please. This gives you a bit of a layout of the footprint of the buildings and gives you an idea of the 3 buildings that are on the north side of Springhurst to the west of this property. Next slide, please. This is part of the now I've forgotten the word for a streetscape analysis. And it's interesting, of course, that we do have quite some driveways on Springhurst. We do not have garages, I should say. We do not have garages on Chestnut. However, the property does face Springhurst. So from a streetscape perspective, it is in keeping with the current streetscape on Springhurst. Next slide, please. This just gives you an idea. The purple is the footprint of what is permitted under the zoning bylaw, and the brown portion is what is being built to. The zoning bylaw would permit a 3-story building. However, the client has built primarily or has built a 3-story building with a 2-story element on the Chestnut side to be in keeping with the 2-story buildings in that neighborhood. Continue. Next slide, please. And this just gives you a little bit of a calculation around the landscaped areas and the amount of landscaped areas that would be permitted under the zoning bylaw if we built a zoning compliant building, that they are fairly similar. I think that's all the slides. This is the site plan for the property. And last slide then, I guess. Elevations to the building. That's it. Okay, if I can get put on back again. All right, thank you. It's just that the variances that are being requested, each individually, both result, one, in a positive aspect. This design of this building adds to the community from the perspective of providing the 2-story element, even though under the zoning bylaw it would be permitted to be 3 stories. In addition to that, the character of the rear yard is also a plus compared to what the zoning bylaw would permit as a rear yard. So in that sense, it adds elements to this project adds elements to the site that have a positive influence on the community, and has very few, if not small, negative consequences to the community.
You don't happen to have a graphic that shows us the particulars or the specifics of where each of these 11 variances are on the site, correct?
Correct.
Right, so
Not one
that's
singular
probably
graphic.
Very
No.
helpful in future.
Yes, agreed, Chair.
All right, any questions from the members at this moment? Mr. Wilder.
Thank you. This is something which I've raised before with the need for double driveways. And once again, I went up this street, I went through the neighborhood, I realized where the lot is located. But to be consistent, I personally have concerns with variance C to increase that driveway width from 3 meters to as much close to 5 meters, 4.71 meters. Likewise, to permit an increased garage door variance H of this, likewise to be the width of that driveway of 4.58 meters. K to permit the double driveway when the bylaw states only single driveways are permitted. So that's for starters. I'd also like to ask you, can you explain to me this vertical ornamental element that's to be 0.34 meters from the corner lot line? What exactly is the nature of that vertical element? And also for variance D, I understand you're looking at putting in a reduced interior side yard of 0.6 compared to, again, 1.2 meters. Yeah, maybe you can explain that as well too, but those are my questions. Thank you.
So, I mean, just to comment on the driveway width, nominally, if this was the front yard of the property, the front lot width. This driveway would be permitted to 6 meters under the current zoning bylaw. The fact that the property's lot width is facing Chestnut is the only reason why we need the variance to go from the 3 meters that are normally permitted for a narrow property to the fact that this property is on the wider, or the access is on the wider side of the property. It might be noted that this committee also approved this variance as part of the previous application that severed the property and expected to put that in. I included that in my submission that I sent to you on Monday. With regards to the 0.6 meter setback, in this case, this 0.6 meter setback, if this property were an internal lot, it would be permitted to have one side yard at 1.2 meters and the other side yard at 0.6 meters. It's only because the property is a corner lot that the zoning bylaw requires the 1.2 meters. That's not uncommon. The 0.6 meters is not uncommon for this area and this style of building. The last thing in terms of the vertical element, one of the things that I think is really important, particularly with a building like this, when it is when the long side is the side that is the entrance side of the building, a lot of times it's very hard to find the entrance. And this owner has gone to great architectural, got very good architectural details to create this vertical element, which is right next to the entrance and porch area. So it helps delineate where you want to come to the building. It's that wayfinding component that makes it very easy to know where the front of this building is. The fact that it has an address on Chestnut is one thing, but the actual front of this building, similar to the buildings, the semi-detached buildings further down Springhurst, faces onto Springhurst, and this way you can find that entrance very effectively.
Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you just expand on the comment you made about a previous severance of this property? And secondly, can you tell me if you were to park in front of the garage door, what the distance would be of that asphalt driveway to the edge of the pavement?
Yes, I can. Actually, Ricardo, maybe you can comment on the previous approval.
Yeah, there's two, thanks, Chris. There's two previous applications. One from the former owner, he applied to 71 Chestnut, was originally built as 3 individual homes, and then it was consolidated under the land titles, and then he applied, and I believe it was in 2016 or 2018, I'll get the exact date, to subdivide them back into 3 lots, and on the corner lot build a 3-story single unit, which had very similar variances, and it was approved by the committee. It included the double driveway. He actually went for height at the time, which were not, and so forth. And then most recently, when we acquired the property, because one of the owners died back in August of 2020, we severed the property 71 back into 3 lots, and I took ownership on the corner lot, and so there was it's now wholly owned by me. But there was a successful application, and I'll find the date and provide it. I think, Chris, unless you have it, for very similar variances.
I have the date and everything. It was, I gave the number on it, but the date was, the hearing was held on May 20th, 2015. The owner was Harris Holohan. And in that application, it's a D08-01-15/B to 00136. So that was part of that application, and that was where that same approach was approved. In terms of the distance between the driveway front and the edge of asphalt. That is exactly 5.7 meters.
Thank you.
That exceeds the minimum distance for a parking space.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an unusual site because the rest of Springhurst has sidewalk on it. That was recently done. This portion does not have sidewalk.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if you'd like to articulate how you've met the 4 tests. Oh, Mr. Wilder has a question again. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So I understand you're saying your unit is going to be at the end. Like, so this is back into 3 lots again. Can you please explain?
Yes, there was a consent to sever and minor variance application in August 2020, which was approved, and the 3 lots were severed. We went through all the conditions. It has been registered on title. The certificate of official, I think it's called, that the committee signs has been signed off. So 60. So it's
actually. So what is happening with the other 2 lots that you had severed?
So 63 and 67 Chestnut are individually owned by other individuals, and they have submitted and have received building permit applications for 2-story units, which they're going to be commencing construction. And I think Chris included them in his graphics just to show from a streetscape and so forth.
So if I may ask, then the 2 homes that are to be built, Mr. Gilcudzy, will those have double driveways or single driveways, please?
So those are 2 front to back semis. If we can go back to the presentation quickly to the very first slide, if that's possible. So you'll see to the left of the proposed dwelling, there are 2 buildings being proposed. They are front to back semis. Their parking is both off the lane to the rear. And so what's really nice about this project is that when you look on the Chestnut side of all 3 properties, these will all be fully landscaped and have no driveways. And the parking, as I say, is from the rear off of the lane that is on the east side of that property. The reason why my client can't access the lane as well is because he has a hydro pole there with a supporting wire that cut across.
So those will have access, I understand, from the lane. There'll be single, there'll be what 2 spaces for each of the semis, or one singular drive for each of the semis next door?
There's 2 parking spaces for each of the semis. So you've got a front to back semi, and you've got a parking space for the front semi. You've got a parking space for the rear semi on each property.
Thank you.
And there were there was no applications for those because they were fully conforming from a variance perspective. So they're both 4 feet off the lot line, 8 feet in between, etc.
They fully comply with the zoning bylaws, and building permits have been issued.
All right. So, Mr. Gilcudzy, how does this application meet the requirements of the 4 tests?
So the 4 tests it meets. Can you put down the slide again so I can see you guys? Sorry. Thank you. There's mine. So it meets the 4 tests. The variances are minor in terms of their overall impact. They also have desirable aspects to them in the sense that they allow for the construction of a building that has positive aspects to it in terms of the neighborhood. The use of the project is desirable. It meets with the intent of the zoning bylaw and also with the official plan.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. That was not an explanation of how they meet the four tests. That was an assertion that they do meet the four tests. There is a difference.
I can expand on that in the sense that, okay, so number one, straight off, their impact is minor in terms of their impact on the site. The development of the proposal is desirable because it brings in a single family home that has 2-story and 3-story elements. It brings in landscaping elements. It brings in a number of positive elements to the property. And it is a desirable form of housing in this neighborhood and in this location. The community in general has seen triplexes being built in this neighborhood, and they are very keen to see additional single-family homes being built as well as part of this. In terms of the general intent of the zoning bylaw, the zoning bylaw permits single-family, semis, and triplexes in this zone, and this proposes to be a single-family home and therefore meets with the intent of the zoning bylaw. In terms of the official plan has a desire to see gentle intensification into lots and areas that are underdeveloped within the city where there are existing services and support and don't require new roads, new plowing, all that sort of thing that comes with urban sprawl. And that's why it meets with the intent of the official plan.
Thank you, Mr. Gelkatzi. We also have Mr. Rose from the Old Ottawa East Community Association. Oh, Mr. Wilder has another question. Go ahead, Mr. Wilder.
Chair, I would like to reserve on this application, please.
Yeah, noted. That was my intent, was to ask whether we should reserve. Anyway, Mr. Rose, Old Ottawa East Community Association, your comments, please. You're muted, Mr. Rose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ron Rose. I'm with the Old Ottawa East Community Association Planning Committee. I must start out by saying that our consideration of this file was greatly hampered by the mislabeling of the item on the panel 1 agenda distributed December 23rd of 2020, where it was indicated it was in Ward 14, I believe. This left very little time for us to consider the large number of requests for variances, 11, of which at least 7 required variance in excess of 50%. And variances of this magnitude cannot be considered minor. We were also at a disadvantage because, contrary to the claim in Mr. D'Angelo's letter to the committee on December 14th, the Community Association was not, to the best of our knowledge, consulted nor made aware of the general concept. However, to mitigate that, Mr. D'Angelo did reach out to the neighborhood and organized a meeting on January 7th, to which the Community Association was able to attend. The meeting was helpful in aiding our understanding of the rationale for many of these requests, as well as benefiting from comments made by neighboring residents. In general, we believe that the neighbors are satisfied with the proposed plans and with many of the variances being requested. They appreciate that the proposal does not represent intensification, which has already created many problems for the residents of Chestnut Street. They are supportive of the proposal to have the entire front yard landscaped, as well as the proposal for a large rear yard. They are particularly concerned, however, about safety issues that I will touch on in a few minutes. It is significant to note that residents of this area of Old Ottawa East have always considered that the parcel designated as Brunswick Street has always been treated as a laneway. In fact, Mr. Jakotski just referred to it as a lane. And the interpretation of some of the requested variances depends on that distinction. We've always considered that to be a laneway. And perhaps the planner can clarify whether that is really a street or a laneway later on. Specific comments. Number one, this building must be viewed as replacing one detached dwelling by another detached dwelling, and is therefore not really considered intensification. As far as requested variance A, we just recently had the opportunity to discover what these vertical ornamental elements are, but we're not sure why they have to be so large as to require a variance. We note that many of the variances requested for reduced setbacks are significant, but we feel they are appropriate and not excessive considering other buildings on the street. We do not agree with the need for a double driveway. We were unaware until this morning that the panel has already made a ruling on a double driveway here. However, in our opinion, if we approve the request for a double garage, that would take care of the need for a parking space for two cars. The driveway would allow parking anyway, but a single driveway, at least at, single width driveway, at least at the curb, should be sufficient to access the double garage. This resolution has been encouraged by this panel before, for example, in the February 20th and March 20th, 2019 hearings reviewing applications at 173/175 Riverdale Avenue, where the applicant agreed to reduce the width of the driveway. We request that the panel reject the relief requested in section K to permit the double driveway. Mr. Chairman, a general comment. Mr. D'Angelo's application to the Committee of Adjustment was accompanied by a letter which provided additional rationale and background. Could the committee secretariat not make this additional information available, generally available? It would certainly facilitate the work of those trying to review these requests. It's also not possible during these pandemic times to physically visit the secretariat to review documentation. I do want to stress to the committee the safety concerns of the community, and I believe that other members of the community have also written to you expressing their concerns about safety. These concerns relate to the safety of pedestrians at the intersection of Springhurst and Brunswick. These concerns have been growing as the number of people using Springhurst Park, which is located directly behind and across the street from this property, as well as to cyclists using a recently established cycle lane leading from Springhurst Park onto Springhurst Street. Safety concerns are highlighted by the lack of sidewalks on this whole block of Springhurst. Much of the danger at this corner is created by a large cedar hedge, which has been allowed to grow on city property, obscuring motorist views of oncoming vehicles and pedestrians. Mr. D'Angelo has addressed these concerns by stating his intention to remove the hedge. This would reduce, but by no means eliminate, residents' concerns about safety at this intersection. We realize, Mr. Chairman, that these safety concerns are beyond the scope of the panel. Nevertheless, we are grateful for any opportunity to bring the concern to the public attention.
Is your counselor aware of the problems at this intersection?
Oh, yes, he is extremely aware, and he is working with Mr. D'Angelo and with city staff on this.
Okay, that's good.
May I continue?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In our original submission, we mentioned that we thought there should also be a request for a minor variance for the requirement in the zoning bylaw that talks about the need when your lot abuts a traveled rear lane, that parking must be accessed from a driveway from the rear lane. And we're wondering whether it was because city planner considers that Brunswick is a street and not a laneway. We also have a question for the city planner. We have reviewed the comments made by the city planner with regard to the requested variance for an interior side yard. We would like to know why the fact that the lot backs on Brunswick and Springhurst Park is a significant factor in reaching this particular decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Very helpful. Any questions of the presenter? So as far as you folks are concerned, this is a laneway and not a street.
As far as the community is concerned, yes. And if you look at maps of that street, if you go north towards Lees Avenue, there's a section of that that is very much a laneway.
However, you don't have confirmation from the city as to the designation of this roadway.
No, I don't. I do recall a comment. I don't want to put Mr. D'Angelo on the spot, but he did make a comment during the public meeting that he was under the impression that his title referred to a laneway.
Ms. Carvajal, could you give us any direction on this?
With regards to Brunswick Lane, there is a portion, but it's northern from this street called Brunswick Street, that it's dedicated lane. However, the portion that abuts 71 Chestnut is not a lane per se. It's part of the park, although it has an asphalt, and I believe it's maintained by, in terms of land, sort of land titles or what it is, it's part of the park. Therefore, this lot is not considered a corner through lot, it's just considered a lot because it technically abuts a park.
So that's not a city street.
No, it's not a city street or a public lane. It's part of the park.
And yet on the maps that we have in front of us, it's labeled as Brunswick Street.
That is correct. It has name as Brunswick. Sorry, it's in name as the street, but there was a consultation, and I believe we looked into whether or not that portion of Brunswick Lane was actually a laneway or not, as it is the northern portion of it, and it was, that is not, that section is actually part of the park. Perhaps the idea was to just continue it as opposed to just cut it through, and that's why it continues to have the name.
So perhaps someone should talk to IT and have Geo Ottawa modified so this no longer shows up as a street identified on the maps. Because that would seem to be a misrepresentation. If it's not a street and it's not a laneway, then there should be nothing on this map that says it is one or the other, correct? Yeah, you got a problem with your data. It could very well influence our decision on this application, because we are well aware that if it is a laneway, then the driveway has to be from the laneway and not off the street, which means a complete change to the design of this building.
Yep.
I don't know about the rest of the members of the committee, but do we need to have this resolved before we proceed to any sort of a decision on this application?
So Mr. Chair, regardless, there's a hydro pole and a hydro connector that is on the back, which would make parking or laneway prohibitive on the back of Brunswick. Just a point of context.
Yeah, which means you'd probably have to apply if that was the case, then you'd have to apply for it to have a driveway as a variance off of Springhurst.
Just as a comment, we went through an extensive consultation with Ms. I can't pronounce your last name, unfortunately, on this matter to make sure that we were covering off all of the variants that were necessary. And I believe, as she has stated, she has done the investigation necessary to show that that property is not a lane and therefore, and not a street, but is part of the park. And so, I mean, I think that evidence is clear from her testimony. I would like also just to make a quick comment on some of the comments from the Community Association when the chair deems it.
Yeah, I'll let you go in a second, Mr. Gelkatzi. So if this is not a street and this is not a laneway, can we have confirmation from you, Ms. Carvajal, and the department that this is the case? Because I think we're going to reserve on this, and that means we'll have to reserve and delay our decision somewhat until such time as we hear from you guys.
Yes, I can get you confirmation.
Yeah, can that be done by tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. That would clarify things for all of us, I think. All right, Mr. Gelkatzi, before you respond, I think we have one other member of the public who wished to speak to this application. That was Mr. Firestone. Is he still there?
Mr. Chair, he doesn't seem to be online.
I can't hear you, ma'am. I can't hear you.
Mr. Firestone does not seem to be online.
Okay. All right. Okay. Ms. Oak-Sharon, you have a question or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rose mentioned something about a recently established cycling lane that is in the area of the lane or street that we've been discussing. I'm just wondering if, I don't know if the planning department can comment or if we can get a few more details anyway on whether that is an informal cycling lane or if there's something more formal that's been established.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of a newly established bicycle lane or multi-use path. Perhaps what the comments were made was regarding to sort of the extension from Springhurst into the park, where it appears to be a bollard in place. So that would mean that at some point Springhurst stops being the street and extends into the park as a bicycle lane or a multi-use path.
I can add some context to that. On the south side of Springhurst, there's a sidewalk that ends at that last home before the green space. And so there's across the frontage of my home on the opposite side of the street, there's no sidewalk. And then at the end, there's the bike lane that goes along the river. And so in our reach out to the community, they were like, speaking with the councillors, why can't we extend the sidewalk on that side of the streets to avoid having the citizens and the community walk on the road or the gravel for safety? I believe that's Mr. Rowe's accurate reflection of the discussion.
That's correct, yes.
All right, thanks. All right, Mr. Gelkatzi, you have a response to the comments? from the public?
Yeah, just two comments. On with regards to the numerical nature of variances, there have been appeals of that type of an approach where variances are considered on a numerical level. In other words, a percentage decrease or increase, that type of thing. And that went to divisional court, and it was ruled that variances are to be determined on the basis of their merit, as whether they're minor or not based on a numerical assessment. So neither can you add your variances all up together, 1, 2, 3, because there's 15. Each variance needs to be assessed as being minor or not. And with regards to the percentage, again, the variance is only minor or not minor based on its 4 tests and not a numerical assessment. And the last thing that I wanted to say in terms of the driveway, the problem we had, and we were trying to figure out a way to get down to a 3-meter wide driveway, is that, as mentioned, the distance between the well, number one, the driveway width is measured at the property line, and because the building is only set back 1.5 meters from the property line, it makes it impossible to get the width of the driveway down to go into a 2-car garage. And as stated previously, that wide lot and the zoning bylaw, the intent of the zoning bylaw was to ensure that driveways would not dominate streetscapes. And we have the long width of this lot, and we've actually reduced the driveway and garage width below the 6 meters that would normally be permitted had this been a front yard under the zoning bylaw.
Judge Alcatsi, you referenced a divisional court decision. Which one would that be regarding variances?
I'd have to dig that out to you for your chair, but I have submitted it in various applications as recently as one that I did in Orleans. And I have the 2 references for the two hearings. One's an OMB hearing that was held, and the other one was a divisional court hearing.
This has nothing to do with Vincent versus DeGasperis, does it?
Excuse me?
This has nothing to do with the Vincent versus DeGasperis decision?
I can't recall right now. No, I can't recall.
Because in that decision, Justice Matlow said size matters and variances are not simply to be judged upon their impact. And that was 2005. And in my estimation, no order in council has overturned that divisional court decision.
I'm quite happy. I will provide you with the specific wording and
I'd appreciate
documents.
it because that's news to me.
No, it's very specific, and I cited it in the past. So
Yeah, well, if you could send us that, I'd certainly appreciate it. That would be
absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I can just make one comment on the ornamental variance.
Sure, certainly go ahead, Mr. Denville.
Because this home fronts on Springhurst and is about 60 feet in width, I put a lot of thought in sort of breaking that up. And so the ornamental aspect is just a bit of a protrusion on the front porch to help divide that long facing frontage. And that same consideration was made on the 3rd floor, why it's set back a few feet from Springhurst and 15 feet from Chestnut, just to help break the property from an aesthetics perspective. And on the side yard variance, because all of the windows are facing Springhurst, Chestnut, and Brunswick, because that's where the park is, that's where the sun exposure is, there wasn't a need for windows there. And with this small width of a lot, I needed to max out some footprint of the building for my personal family use.
Understood.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments from the members?
Chair, just as we look to staff to clarify the lane, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable with just, yeah, it's only partly a lane or it's entirely a lane. I'd really like to know what the city surveyor has to say about it and where it stops and starts. If we're going to go down the path of looking for information, it should be information coming from the city surveyor so that we're clear on where it starts and stops.
I agree. I think we can make sure that the department exceeds to our request, Mr. Wellman. All right, I think we are going to reserve on this application. Like as everybody knows, we need clarification from the department on the status of that roadway behind your property, Mr. D'Angelo. And you'll be hearing from us within 10 days. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay. All right. Bear with me for a second. All right. Next application we'll deal with today is item 10 on the agenda, 504 and 508 O'Connor Street. And this is again to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land. The existing multi-unit residential building and existing detached dwelling will remain with one building on each parcel of land. So we have, I believe we have Tanner is the agent for the applicant. Is he there?
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. Harlan Tanner, address 11 Bennington Street, Ottawa.
And first of all, before we begin, I have to administer the oath to you.
Yes.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
I do.
Okay, please proceed on this consent application.
So this is regarding 504, 508 O'Connor Street. These properties merged by inadvertence in 2018. The properties were owned by the current owner's parents, and one property was owned by the current owners. Upon the death of both parents, the current owners became owners of both properties, and then they became adjacent owners of part lots on a plan of subdivision. Of course, we have a full lot and then we have two part lots, which is comprising these properties, and that's where the problem occurred. So we would now just like to reinstate the lots to exactly where they were previously and have been for, I'm not sure how many years, but obviously many years.
I assume that there's no new structures on the land?
There is no new construction planned, no new construction undertaken.
Ms. McLean, you had comments on this? Any questions?
No, that was my question, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay. This is a simple consent application. And the one condition that's requested is the proof of independent services.
Yes, I saw that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All in favor of the consent application as provided? Yeah, your consent is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too. We'll now deal with item number 11 on the agenda, 225, 227 Carlton Avenue. And this again is to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the two-story semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. And I believe Mr. Gavrin is the.
Yes, hello everyone. I don't know if you can see me and hear me properly.
Yep. Could you give us your address, please?
The address is 225, 227 Carlton Avenue.
Okay. And if you could get, this is a simple consent application.
Simple consent. We are already under construction, and we got the minor variance last February, I believe.
Okay. You're aware of the conditions, the cash in lieu of parkland, independent services, grading and drainage plan, joint use and maintenance agreement, and the accessory structure to be removed?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And I note that the Champlain Park Community Association is in support of the application.
Exactly.
Right. Any questions for the applicant from the members of the panel? All in favor of granting this consent? Your consent is granted.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now deal with item number 12 on the list, 1264 Livingston Avenue. And this is to permit a reduced lot area for the conversion of a portion of the basement to a secondary dwelling unit. And it's Mr. James is the agent for the applicant.
Yes, that's me.
Mr. James, your address, please.
It's 1104 Apollodore Avenue.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to have to administer the oath before we proceed. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Okay, if you could give us a brief presentation of your request for relief, please.
Sure. Thank you to the members of the committee and any members of the public who are attending this hearing. We do have a short slide presentation. We appreciate the opportunity to present today. So just a quick bit of background. This is a property that we acquired in 2017. We received a building permit in June of 2019. We were advised at that point in time, in order to include a secondary dwelling unit, that we would require minor variance, which is the purpose of the presentation today. We require minor variance in order to add the proposed secondary dwelling due to the size of the lot in the R10 zone, which permits only single detached dwellings. The lot is of a similar size to others within the neighborhood, and we have taken care in the design and planning to minimize the impact on the streetscape and our neighbors. As you can see in slide 1 of the presentation currently on your screen, there is no visible indication of a secondary dwelling unit from the street, preserving the appearance of a single family home. Next slide, please. Slide 2 of the presentation shows the proposed secondary dwelling unit's entrance, which will be on the east side of the house and separate from our residence. We intend on placing some motion sensor lighting on down the side of the building so that the tenants feel safe entering and exiting. Next slide, please. Slide 3 shows the proposed layout of the separate entrance to the proposed secondary dwelling unit. Stairs will run along the east side of the building. All boundaries between the principal residence and the proposed SDU are fully compliant with building code in that they are fire rated, demonstrating our intent to comply in this manner. And lastly, slide 4 shows the layout of the proposed secondary dwelling unit itself, which includes a living space, kitchen, dining, 3-piece bathroom with on-site laundry, and a single bedroom. We believe that as a 1-bedroom self-contained living space would be attractive to potential tenants as an affordable way to live in this neighborhood. Many amenities are within walking distance, including grocery stores, pharmacies, and ready access to public transit, north, south, east, and west. We'd also note that we're just a short distance from the Billings Bridge shopping center as well. And we just wanted to note that as we were designing our home, we always committed ourselves to building a sustainable and climate resistant, resilient residence, and have taken steps throughout to manage our long-term environmental impact. Our home is being built to a net zero energy standard, including a solar array on the southern portion of the roof and a high efficiency greenhouse gas-free heating and cooling system. The proposed unit will have its own water supply and a separate electrical panel. But due to the overall efficiency of the home, the HVAC will actually be integrated into the larger system. That concludes the presentation. What we're doing here is we're converting a portion of the new portion of the house into a secondary dwelling unit, and we're seeking consent from the committee to do so. Thank you.
I believe Ms. McLean had a question for you regarding lot areas.
I'm just concerned that there's no certifiable lot area shown on the survey plan, and that the covering letter talks about a lot area of approximately, and the 427 was stricken and it was inserted 429. Since the minor variance is to lot area, there is a risk to the applicant if this is not the correct lot area. So I just wanted to point that out and just wondered if the applicant has obtained the lot area from the surveyor.
So this was a discrepancy that was noted. We had an official survey done. It came back as 427, and there was an error whenever we filed the original application that was corrected to 429 meters, which was specified to us whenever the city replied back as part of our building application.
So as long as you're comfortable that that's the correct lot area, and you assume the risk that if it's not, the variance may not be of any value to you. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the members of the panel for the applicant? We note that secondary dwelling units are permitted as of right in the city. I'm glad to see that you're providing affordable housing for someone. All in favor of granting this application as presented? All right, your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 13. 688 Hillcrest Avenue. And this is an application to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land for the construction of two proposed detached dwellings with one dwelling on each parcel of land. And the agent for this would either be Mr. Polton or Mr. Chown. Mr. Polton.
Good afternoon.
Your address, please, for the record.
So I'm Ryan Polton, planner with Novatech, and we're at 240 Michael Copeland Drive.
All right, and I'm going to have to administer the oath before we proceed. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I swear.
Okay. If you would like to proceed, Mr. Bolton.
Okay. Also on the call should be Murray Chan from Novatech. I just want to let you know that. So I'm acting as agent on behalf of the owners. We prepared and filed reciprocal severance applications for the property at 688 Hillcrest Avenue. I'm actually surprised the image looks this bad. So it's just Geo Ottawa's aerial photo identifying the property. So the property is on the west side of Hillcrest Avenue, and it's on a block bounded by Dovercourt Avenue to the north, Tilbury Avenue west to the south, Hillcrest Avenue to the east, and Denbury Avenue to the west. The property is just north of Notre Dame High School. Going down to actually slide 3 shows our severance sketches. Slides 3 and 4, they're basically the same though. So we're creating two equivalent lots. They both have the same lot frontage and lot width, as well as the same lot area. And these are just simple severances, request to demolish the existing house and build two new single detached dwellings. The proposed lots will have a frontage of 15.24 meters and lot areas of 478.4 square meters. 68 Hillcrest Avenue is in the general urban area, and it is zoned residential first density, subzone O. The lot width and lot area of the proposed lots meet the performance standards for the zone. Services are available along Hillcrest Avenue for the new detached dwellings. The severances will complement the pattern and scale of development along Hillcrest Avenue. The majority of properties already developed with single detached dwellings that front onto Hillcrest Avenue. And that's a quick summary of the applications. We would also like to mention that we have received the comments from Hydro Ottawa and Bell regarding the requests for easements. And as a consequence, in terms of hydro, I understand they can seek an easement without following a consent application process. However, Bell would require a consent application process. We would like to request amending this application to provide an easement for Bell as requested in their letter, and then make that as a condition of approval for these consent applications.
So make the, so we're adding a condition 5 that that is conditional on on Bell being granted an easement.
Yes, that would be our preference.
What happened to hydro?
So my understanding is hydro can be granted an easement without having to go through this consent process. So that does not have to be a condition on approval of the severances. However, Bell needs that. So again, I'd like to amend the application to provide Bell that easement that they need.
Okay, so we can add that as the 5th condition. There's cash in lieu of parkland, independent services, grading and drainage, and existing dwelling removed, and we'll just add Bell being granted an easement.
I understand.
To accede to their request. You're aware of Forestry Services comments?
Actually, no, we did not receive forestry.
Pardon?
We did not receive Forestry Service comments, sorry.
Okay. Their comment is there are several trees on the subject and adjacent properties protected under the tree protection bylaw. The tree information report will be required at the time of building permit application, and the houses, services, and driveways should be designed to allow for the retention and protection of those trees. Does anybody hear from the Forestry Department right now?
Yes, I'm here. This is Nancy.
Okay, so these folks have to talk to you before anything happens, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So you're now aware of the request from the Forestry Department, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you.
It's a new world as of January the 1st.
Okay.
All right. Okay, let me think. So we've added a condition. You're creating 2 legal lots. I note that the committee notes that there are 2 letters of support from neighbors. I believe we have an area resident who'd like to speak to the issue of Ms. Beaubien.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Actually, you just happily raised the question I have, which was.
Can I have your address, please, ma'am?
Oh, it's just a second, just turning that off. Marnie Beaubien, 394 Kenwood Avenue.
All right.
And I just on Google Maps and driving by, there was some pretty healthy trees at the front of the property that looked well, and they're gone now. Like they're recent cuts. So I'm just interested in your forestry comments because the trees are gone now. So I don't know if Mr. Polton or Murray Town can speak to that.
Well, that's really not within the purview of this discussion, quite frankly.
Okay. So, well, just to say the trees are already gone. So
no. That's I guess that's between the developer and the city.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, the same Novatech people took down trees on Cole for the same way in the same manner. So anyways, that was really my concern, was about the trees on the property are already gone.
Well, I'd if you raise this with forestry.
Okay. Nancy Young, I'll reach out to her after.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to ask about.
Thank you. Thank you for your input, Ms. Beaubien. All right, Ms. McLean.
Just going back to the hydro request for an easement, I think it might be important to add that as a condition, whether it be couched in terms of an easement or just satisfying hydro requirements. It may avoid an appeal of the committee's decision by hydro. So I think generally we put it on and then let the applicant and deal with Hydro and then have Hydro clear the condition.
Mr. Chairman, it's Murray Chan. We wouldn't object to that. Thank you.
So we'll add a sixth condition, Mr. Polton.
Okay.
So that's adding Bell and Hydro. That'll be an amendment. All right. Any other comments from members of the committee regarding this application? All in favor of approving this application as amended? Thank you. Your application is approved.
Thank you very much.
And I'll deal with items 14 and 15 on the agenda. 377A, 377B Sunnyside Avenue, and 79 Rosedale. Summary of application is to subdivide the property into 3 separate parcels of land. Existing townhouse dwelling will remain. To permit reduced lot areas, front yard, rear yard, and side yard setbacks, rear yard areas, and to permit eaves, awnings, and stairs to project to the property line. It is proposed to subdivide the property into 3 separate parcels of land. The existing townhouse dwelling, Rosedale Place, will remain, and the proposed parcels and existing townhouse dwelling will not be in conformity with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. This was we're back with this today after an adjournment request on the 18th of November. And that was a request from the planning department regarding extra variances needed. So the revisions, and this is a revision to correct variance D, dated January the 8th. And variance D reads, to permit a reduced rear yard area equal to 0% of the lot area by 0% of the lot width, or in this case, 0 square meters. Whereas the bylaw requires a rear yard area equal to 25% of the area of the lot by 30% of the width of the lot. In this case, 7.3 square meters, and that needs to be corrected to read 4.37 square meters. That was a typo. So that is the corrected variance D. And the agent on this application are either Ms. West or Mr. Chown, who's going to deal with this today.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's Murray Chown. My apologies. My video was working this morning when I was in front of panel 3, but for some reason it doesn't appear to be working right this moment.
All right, we know what you look like.
Mr. West has stepped away actually to file an application with the committee this afternoon because we're not sure with the new rules and regulations coming into effect tomorrow morning what the process would be for filing. So he may actually rejoin us during this during this presentation, because I don't expect him to be long. His scheduled appointment was at 2:45, and he lives virtually across the street from Constellation. So he may rejoin us, and if the coordinator could just keep an eye out for him if he does do that.
So I can administer the oath to you.
You certainly can, sir.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
I do.
All right, so we're back again. I guess we should hear from the planning department first, because they're the ones who requested this adjournment. Mr. Nadeau, around? All right.
Yes, he is, Mr. Chair.
And the department's position now that the requested changes have been made.
Yes, now that the changes have been made, the department is comfortable with the requested variances and consents. The variances relating to the rear yard setbacks and area have been added, and I should add vetted with staff members by the applicant. And so we are fine with this proceeding at this time.
What about the conveyances? I mean, you had indicated there were conveyances that needed, and now I guess the conveyances are not going to happen?
That is true. And it is something I raised with the applicant. Mr. Chown might be better equipped to explain the rationale for that. But it is our understanding that there is already a lot line going through the neighboring house, and the abutting landowner can't be compelled to accept a conveyance. So it is really up to the applicant in this case.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chown, please proceed.
So thank you
Perhaps
for
maybe explain that that lot line going through the neighbor's dwelling.
certainly, Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll start there just because you've raised the question with Mr. Nadeau, and I might as well deal with that first. When the applications were first before the committee, before Christmas, they did include a lot additions to deal with the encroachment of the existing house at 77 Rosedale onto the subject property. The owner of 77 Rosedale, you may recall, actually attended committee before Christmas. I don't know if he's here this afternoon or not, but he did attend, and that we were then able to reach out to him. When we first filed the applications, which included the lot additions, we hadn't been able to reach the owner of the property next door. So following the meeting before Christmas, our client did reach out to Mr. Peters, and Mr. Peters indicated that he was quite content with the existing conditions, and he wasn't terribly interested in a lot addition. He had his own concerns about what the ramifications might be for him personally in terms of changing his title, changing mortgages, and whatever. So he actually came back to our client, indicated he was quite content to live with the existing condition. And so as a result, at the same time that we amended our applications to address the comments raised by Mr. Nadeau, we've revised the applications to eliminate the lot addition requests. Of course, if the neighbor next door somewhere down the road decides he'd like to reconsider his position, we could always come back to the committee with the lot addition applications. But for the purpose of the applications that are before you today, there is no lot addition application before you. With that answer, hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Chair. With that, if I could ask the coordinator to put up the presentation package that Mr. West provided. And so we'll start just quickly. The existing property is located on the north side of Sunnyside Avenue and east of Rosedale. It's a corner property. If I can go to the next slide, please. So this slide itemizes the variances that are being requested with respect. As the chair noted, as we kicked off this discussion, there is an existing 3-door townhouse dwelling on the property. The effect of the applications is to allow for the conveyance of each of those units separately. Because of the existing conditions and the existing building, there are a number of variances that are required. So starting with the unit on the corner, which would be legally described as parts 1, 2, 7, and 8 on the draft reference plan, that property would be non-conforming with respect to lot area. It would be non-conforming with respect to the rear yard provisions, both in terms of setbacks and area. Mr. Chair, you've already noted the amendment that needs to be made with respect to variance D. And there are also variances associated with the permitted projections into the corner side yard setback included with respect to the corner lot. With respect to the middle lot, once again, we've got a number of variances, including the lot area and variances associated with the rear yard setback and rear yard area. And then we once again have variances with respect to the right-hand unit or the third unit. All of those variances recognize existing conditions. If I can go to the next slide, please. This is an aerial which just all it is important to look at the record or to acknowledge from this aerial image is on the corner side yard that the existing building actually extends and touches the building to the north. If I can go to the next slide, please. So this is a view of the property from Rosedale. You can see the building on the subject property connecting with the structure at 77 Rosedale at the second floor. And that results in the 0 rear yard setback and the 0 rear yard. But you'll see below the second floor that there's actually a passageway underneath that second floor. And that passageway provides access to the rear yards of both the middle and the most easterly unit. But there also is an easement registered in favor of the property to the north across the backyards. If I can go to the next image, please. This image helps to visualize the permitted projections on the west side of the building. The eaves for the roof extend into that corner side yard, as does the canopy that you can see in this, this photograph. If I can go to the next slide, please. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is the view of the building from Sunnyside. The steps and the canopy and the eaves are not projections into the front yard. The building actually sits on the lot line. And so all of those features of the building are actually encroachments into the road allowance. And so we have a concurrent application that's being handled by the city's right-of-ways department to obtain approvals for those encroachments. We have approval in principle from them. They're just waiting for the finalization of these applications and depositing of the associated reference plans so we can finalize that approval. If I can go to the next slide, please. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is the draft reference plan that has been filed with the consent applications. Once again, going left to right, the first property would consist of parts 1, 2, 7, and 8. Excuse me. Part 2 would be subject to an easement in favor of the owners of parts 3 and 4 and parts 5 and 6 and the neighbor to the north. Part 7 is the portion of the building that's above that easement, and part 8 is the area that is subject to the encroachment. The middle lot would consist of parts 3, 4, and 9. Part 4 is the rear yard that would be subject to an easement in favor of the owners of parts 1, 3, 5, and 6, and also of benefit to the owner to the north. And finally, the last severance would be parts 5 and 6, with 6 being subject to an easement in favor of the owner of the property to the north. Parts 10, 11, and 12 that are shown on this plan are actually the areas that would be subject to the encroachment agreement with the city. They do not form part of the 3 lots being created. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, subject to any questions you may have with respect to the applications, I'd ask you to approve the variances with the amendment and the consents as filed.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. Mr. Wildman, you have a question or comment?
Just, Mr. Chown, any indication of when the encroachment matter will be dealt with?
Well, it has been dealt with in principle. We just need to get the reference plan deposited, and then we can finalize the paperwork.
Would you have any objection then, Mr. Chown, to having a condition that that matter be concluded as a condition?
With respect, I don't think it has anything to do with the application that's before the committee this afternoon.
Well, you're looking for an encroachment, are you not?
Not from this committee, I'm not.
Right, but your encroachment is triggered by what?
It is an existing condition. It's not being triggered by these applications.
And so, and your front yard setbacks and the likes are they not intertwined with that?
No, because my front yard setback is an existing condition of 0. The encroachments are the projections, and they're not within the front yard.
So none of these variances that you're seeking, I don't know, gosh, there's got to be a dozen or so. Not one of them is affected by the encroachment.
No, sir, it is not. They are not.
Could I just ask staff's point of view on that, please?
Through the chair, I agree with Mr. Chown in this respect that we're dealing with 0 meter front yard setbacks. The encroachments will be dealt with through the separate application.
So if the encroachments, for some strange reason, it's not that I disbelieve Mr. Chown, but if for some strange reason something came up, this would not require any amendments or any revisiting of what we've done here today?
That would be the case, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the members of the committee? Mr. Chown, you're aware of the input from Building Code Services regarding fire separations?
Yes.
Well, and fire separations and party wall certification?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. I think we're going to add that as a condition in addition to independent services and a joint use and maintenance agreement. And we're also going to, I think the committee has decided that probably the best thing to do is to tie our approval to the life of the buildings.
That would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. So with that addition of party wall certification, fire separation condition, all in favor of this?
Sorry, just one last question. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chown, variance K.
You'll have to help me, Mr. Wildman. What is variance K?
To permit stairs to project to 0 meters from the front lot line, whereas the bylaw requires stairs to be no closer than 1 meter.
Right. So if we could go to the presentation and the image that shows the Sunnyside elevation, the street elevation. The next one. So there are stairs that are within the building. We wanted to make sure that, just in the abundance of caution, that they actually come to the lot line. And so we were seeking, as I say, I think in the abundance of caution, permission for those stairs to the relief required for those stairs to come to the lot line.
Okay, and so if for some strange reason, the encroachment approval does not come through, it's a heck of a step down to Sunnyside.
That would be true.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, comments from the members of the committee? All in favor of this application as amended? Right. Application's approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
And we will now deal with item number 16 on the agenda, 529 Broadhead Avenue. It's the third time that we've dealt with this application. It is an application to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the proposed semi-detached dwelling. Proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and detached garage. And is the agent there?
No, I think it will just be me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if you could identify yourself and give us your address, please.
I'm Hazem Abdul Naim, 527-529 Broadhead Avenue.
All right. Okay. This is the third time that you've been before us on this. Please proceed with your application.
Okay, so if you recall, the first application was to subdivide one of the lots into a flag to retain the two storage units into one. Then the second application was to jig the line of the severance line between the two parcels to allow one of the storage units to remain as is without being demolished or downsized. And that was the last one. And based on the committee's recommendation, we revised the severance line to be a straight line. So it's should be a straightforward application. No severance is required, no conditions or anything like that.
I failed to administer the oath, so I'll do it right now. Make sure I meet the legislative requirements. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
You have a site plan that shows the new lot configurations? Okay.
So equally sized lots, straight line, shouldn't be.
Okay. And you're aware of the conditions that have been requested, cash in lieu of parkland, grading and drainage, existing dwelling removed, independent services determined, and a joint use and maintenance agreement?
Correct, yeah. And similar to the other applicants today, it's just a matter of forwarding them the plans.
Yeah. Yes. You're in construction right now, correct? It's already complete?
Yeah, well, almost complete. I'm hoping for occupancy in the next month or two.
Okay.
A bit of the delay.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding this application from the members of the panel? All right. All in favor of granting this application as provided? All right. Your application is granted. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that being the end of the agenda, this hearing is adjourned.